June 1st marks the first day of hurricane season. And while we're talking about hurricanes, have you ever noticed how they almost always come off the coast of Africa and how they trace the same exact route that those slave ships took across the Atlantic? Well, the old folks say that's not just the wind, that's the ancestors, stirring, moving, letting the world know they're still here. Because some say hurricanes don't just form, they follow memory, they follow pain, they follow power. And if you've been paying attention lately, you know the ancestors have been busy. Because just like the ocean was used to bring us into bondage, it was also used to chase freedom. In this route, it was by sea, and they called it the Blue Highway. We always hear about the Underground Railroad, but this was the water version. Enslaved people along the coast, from Savannah, Charleston, New Orleans, all the way up to Baltimore, used ships, steamboats, and even fishing boats to escape. They hid in barrels, crawled into storage crates, snuck into ship crews. Some swam, some rowed, some prayed their way through open water, and somehow, some made it. Let's talk about Lear Green. She was 18 when she escaped. Now, she was enslaved in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, I know what you're thinking. Baltimore, that's the North. But here's the thing, slavery was mostly outlawed in the North by the early 1800s, but border states like Maryland, Kentucky, and Delaware still allowed it. So even though Baltimore wasn't in the deep South, slavery was still legal there. And Lear's story was especially heartbreaking. Her enslaver was cruel. He assaulted her, and then he would allow others to do the same, using her however he wanted. But in the middle of all that, Lear met a man, a free black man from Philadelphia named William Adams. He had come to Baltimore maybe for work or through church, and they fell in love. His mother, Miss Adams, came up with a plan. They folded Lear into a wooden chest, gave her a quilt, a little food, and a bottle of water, sealed it shut with rope, and loaded it onto a steamboat called the Kentucky, headed from Baltimore to Philadelphia. 18 hours in a box, no light, no space, no air. And when they opened it, she stepped out, free, reunited with the man she loved. They got married, and Lear never looked back. Now that's a freedom story. But not every story ended like Lear's. Some folks drowned trying to get to the ships, some were caught hiding below the deck and sold deeper into the South. And even if you made it up north, that Fugitive Slave Act meant you could still be captured and dragged back. Freedom wasn't just a destination, it was a gamble. Now, let me tell you about Moses Roper. He escaped more than a dozen times, and each time they tortured him worse. They whipped him, crushed his fingers, smashed his toes. They even lit tar on fire and burned it onto his head. But he never gave up. Eventually, Moses made it from Florida to Savannah, snuck onto a ship disguised as a steward, and got to New York. And when bounty hunters got too close, he dipped again, and this time to Liverpool. And he didn't just escape, he wrote a book about it. He documented his resistance. He told the world what they tried to hide. This wasn't random, this was a whole system. Black dock workers, sailors, and families worked together. They passed messages, studied ties, and watched for which captains might turn a blind eye. Escaping by sea took strategy. It was chess, not checkers, and it was dangerous, but brilliant. So why don't they teach us this? Why don't they talk about the water routes, about Lear Green, about Moses Roper, or about Robert Smalls, the one who stole the Confederate ship and later went on to become a U.S. Senator? We hear about stowaways, we hear about the ones who didn't make it, but we don't hear enough about the ones who did, the ones who found freedom through water, not death. Because this wasn't just a few lucky escapes, this was a movement. Over 100,000 people are believed to have gotten away using water routes like this. But of course, for some reason, they don't teach us these stories in school. Because the rule is, if it doesn't get written down, then it didn't happen. But the crazy part, Moses Roper did write it down, and still, they left it out. Why? Because, like we said, this isn't just a story about slavery, It's a story about strength, about strategy, about black people using the same water that brought them pain to find power. We were always taught that water was our weakness, but it's only a weakness if we let other people tell the story for us. Because if we don't tell it, they'll clean it, they'll twist it, they'll water it down, and we'll be left with whatever version they decide to give us. That's why sharing these stories matters. Every time you like, share, or comment, you help our stories live. You help the truth travel. So if this moved you, subscribe, because this is just one of those stories that they won't put in your textbook. Peace.